you know who made it?
Welcome to the See Me Be Me podcast. Today, we are joined by the co-founder of ColorInTech, Ashleigh Ainsley. Welcome, Ashleigh.
Hey, how's it all going?
No, it's good, thank you. So, Ashleigh, can you tell our audience a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yeah, so my name's Ashleigh Ainsley. I'm co-founder of ColorInTech. I set it up about 5 years ago after working in the technology industry for, maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 years before that. The objective to try and get more people from underrepresented backgrounds, particularly ethnic minorities, into the industry. Why? Because we're traditionally underrepresented and no one was doing anything of particular note about it when we started it. So, my background we can go a bit further into for sure, but that's on the really high level part of it.
I wanted to go into your background, Ashleigh. Could you take us through your experience working at Google, and how did the experience at Google essentially get you started on your journey as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, well, it actually starts a bit further back. So, long story short, I wasn't particularly well off at all when I was a kid. I just was a normal person in South London, basically. And I remember two things. So I'm old enough to remember when there was dial-up on the internet. So for the younger listeners, before broadband, if that time existed, in order to get on the internet, you had to plug things in. So you had to literally go to a plug socket, plug in a cable, and connect it to your laptop or your computer, and that's how you would connect to the internet. And that cable plugged into where your phone used to go. Yeah, you used to also have to plug in phones. As a result of that, there was a limited time where you could be on the internet or you could be on the phone, but you couldn't be on both. So as a result, I had an hour a day basically to be on the internet. And most of that time was spent basically doing your homework. I was in secondary school at the time. So effectively, what I needed to do, my problem, how do I reduce my amount of time doing homework and increase my amount of time doing gaming and just other nefarious things on the internet?
Yeah.
So as a result of that, I needed to have technology to help me. I discovered two things. Wikipedia, this is before my teachers knew what it was. It seems a bit crazy now, but it's still an amazing source. Provided me all the answers to my homework really quickly. So I cut down my homework time from tens of minutes to tens of seconds, literally. Just copy and paste out Wikipedia, that was fine. And then the second thing was Google Earth. I remember when they came up with that whole audacious project to literally draw and picture the entire world. Now, bear in mind, I hadn't really got on a plane in a long time. I didn't have the opportunity. So I was seeing places I'd never been able to see apart from TV. I was like, I don't know what that is, but I want to do that. Anyway, long story short, I was good at school. Might as well be if you're going to sit there in the lessons and, be there. So I decided to be good at it. And long story short, I managed to get myself some really good grades and got myself into Oxford University. And there I studied geography. But I was always interested in geography and this technology thing, which I kind of knew. It was always bubbling there. So I ended up doing my dissertation on effectively Google Maps, how we can use mapping technology to understand the world better, to solve some of the problems that we had in terms of understanding the world around us. So whether it's pollution, traffic, I looked at transport delays in particular. That was my dissertation. If people have used the app City Mapper, that's what my dissertation was, basically saying that we needed stuff like that. And then lo and behold, because I went to Oxford, I got massive privilege, and that was stuff that I never had access to as just a normal black kid in London. It wasn't. I was like, what? So I went from one of the most diverse places in the world, really, Lewisham, to one of the least in 60 miles, and it's like, whoa, what is that? And I had doors open to me that otherwise I wouldn't have had. And one of them, I found out that Google were doing internships in London. I didn't know that Google even had an office in London. I didn't know they were present in London. Why would I know? So long story short, I got introduced to someone at Google and was talking to them about my application. His name called Oliver. He still works there. He's an amazing guy. Yeah, they asked you about what your favorite Google product was in your application. And it's like, well, guess what mine was? Google Earth, innit? And I can talk about that really well. So I wrote about that, had an interview. Long story short, knew more about Google Earth and Google Maps than the people interviewing me. So they gave me a job. So yeah, I ended up there. But, I love the time at Google. I've got a lot of affection for that brand and that company. But when I got there, it felt more like Oxford than Lewisham. And I was like, what's up with that? Everyone uses your products. Everyone knows who you are. Why is it that I have my friends and people asking me as an intern to get a job there or to work there, or what it's like why me? Just, some kid that managed to get myself into Oxford. So I was like, we need to do something about that. And that was kind of the idea that's in my head. I left Google. I went to a startup afterwards. That was an amazing time. But again, Startup Land was less diverse than Google. So I had Oxford, I had Google, I had Startup, and it was like less diverse than all of Lewisham. I was like, what's going on? Anyone can set up a business. I was selling cookies in the playground at 12. Like, do you get what I'm saying? Like, what was the problem? So as a result of all of that, I was just like, okay, we need to do something about it. So I met my co-founder, a guy called Dion. He's another black guy in tech, and we're like, why don't we see many people like us? You know, you've got to stop and say hello to the person if you see them, because you might not see another one for another week. So like that's kind of like what happened there. And then we got to that point where we were chatting, and then De Montfort University in Leicester, they reached out to us. They were like, please help, get some of our students into tech. We're like, we'll call in some favors, see if we can help. Basically flew these students out to Silicon Valley. We took them to Google HQ, we took them to Weebly, which is a website building company. We took them to like loads of companies, and we're like, let's try and help them get jobs. But the problem was they couldn't do it. They didn't know how to do that. They weren't great at networking. They don't have the same access to, I suppose, knowing how to get a recruiter to refer you to someone in London. We came back and Demont were like, that was really great. Can you keep helping our students? And we're like, yeah, we'd love to, but we've still got full-time jobs. Do you know what I mean? At this point, I was like 23. I was like, just started my career. Like, do you know what I mean? I ain't stopping to try and help students. I've just been one. And then they're like, oh, please. And it's like, it's not like we don't want to. It's just it's time, innit? And they're like, is it about money? And it's like, no, it's time, innit? And then it was like, well, what have we paid you? And it's like, it's not about the money, it's about our time. How many times do I have to say? Like, please. And then it was like, well, look, let's maybe do a train the trainer model where we can train other people to do what we were doing. But like as a result, also kind of it meant that I didn't have to do it, my co-founder didn't have to do it ourselves. So basically they were like, okay, we'll give you a bit of cash to do that. We were like, okay, yeah. So, but we couldn't put in our own personal accounts. We didn't want the money, and it wasn't for us. It was for the cause. So we need a business account to put it in. So we're like, well, we'll create a not-for-profit. That's what we called it, ColorInTech. So that's where it came from. And then we hired our first person. They started to help the students. Students started to become more successful. We did more universities. But then we're like, boom, it doesn't make sense that the universities are paying for this. I mean, to an extent it does. But, the companies are the ones that are disproportionately benefiting it. So we need to pivot the business model. So that took a little bit of time, a bit painful at points. But we managed to pivot it to get corporates to pay us to do it. Because, they were hiring great people, they were getting all the benefits from, some of these amazing students that were starting to work for them. And, they should be paying for that work. So, that's kind of what happened. And, that's kind of what we do today. Is still one of the core pillars of that. So, conscious I've just spoken at you for that time, but that's where it started from. And that's how we got to where we kind of started, if that made sense.
No, that's been great. It's been good to get an insight into your journey and how the evolution of how ColorInTech came to be. For you, when you were growing up, did you have any insight of what you wanted to be? Obviously, you went to go and study geography at university. Did you want to be a geologist, or had you always thought about a career?
It's kind of an in-joke as well, isn't it? Like that's what lots of people do. No, I mean, look, when I was really young, I thought I wanted to be a pilot, and then I got on a plane. I was like, this turbulence thing ain't for me. I was just like, I'm holding on here. You don't want me flying that thing. And then, like as I said, when I was playing with Google Earth, I was like, I don't know what that is, but I want to do it. I don't know what the job was. I didn't know what it was, but that was cool. This tech thing was solving problems. This Earth thing was interesting to me. I didn't know what it was. I still don't know what it is. I kind of have a better idea, but whatever it is, I want to do that. I want to make that happen, and that was kind of the idea. So, I mean, the whole of me studying geography at university thing, like, I suppose to any young people who might be listening to this, I think it's better to be studying something you're interested and passionate about and do that well. Like, that passion will introduce you to people and opportunities in a way that, I know people have gone and studied other things and they think it's like the path to a job and they've gone into it and hated it, or, they thought it would give them like, success and riches, and it's not even led them to do certain things. Like, I think it's really important just to follow your passion. If you're going to do academia, you're going to do the university thing, do something you're going to do well in, and then, use your chance of doing well in something to be the best at what you do and meet great people in that process. And that will probably stand you in far better stead than, I could have done a law degree or accounting degree, but I never wanted to be accountant. I never wanted to be a lawyer. As I was going up, I kind of, even when I went to university, it wasn't really clear. I thought I'd go into consulting, and I kind of did eventually, just because I like problem solving. I like the variety of different stuff, but I always knew I wanted it to be in relation to technology. If we talk about STEM, like, I wasn't an engineer. I didn't do the math. but I was always good and interested in science. There's elements of science and physical geography as well. So, I was always interested in like Earth and Earth system processes and stuff. But yeah, I don't want to be taking more oil out the ground. Like, no shade to people who do that, but that wasn't my calling. So I was just like, well, as much as I like geography, putting me on the edge of a volcano, standing up on there, like I can do it on a holiday, but I want to be sticking out if I did it all the time. So I was just like, it's got to be the T in it. So I had to do the technology bit. And for me, I didn't really know about careers in tech, which is one of the reasons I wanted to set up what I do now, because there's so many great opportunities that I kind of stumbled across, but actually the industry can do far better job at marketing what's available to people.
In terms of your organization, ColorInTech, you're aiming to improve like access and awareness for ethnic minorities to enter essentially into the tech industry. But what would you say are some of the main barriers for ethnic minorities to enter, let's say, into careers within tech?
I mean, great question. The good thing is we did some research on that. There's a few things. I think there's kind of a few ways that you can look at it. So one is actually around skills. So unfortunately, we are in a society where we can spell out people after 15 years of formal education and they're still not suitable to get in jobs. And that's because, there's more than just, can you pass an exam paper? But it's like, can you network? Can you think laterally? Can you work in a team? Can you do all the other sorts of things that you need to actually do in a business? We don't really teach that. And, if people don't have exposure to that, it's no surprise that they might not be that great at that. And those are some of the skills that we as employers want. And disproportionately, that affects, people from underrepresented backgrounds, because they have less opportunities to get exposed to people who are in, say, professional environments or who work for companies who can give referrals or interview tips, etc., etc. So, some of those are like the skills barriers, which is, one of the things that we need to do in terms of the digital skills agenda. I think part of it's also, I'll call out the elephant in the room. Part of it's been historic discrimination, racism. Like, if you just look at the data which is available, if you've got certain surnames, you're less likely to get called to interview. Let's just be honest about that. That is a factor why some people do not get opportunities and jobs. There is that happens as well. And also, as I said, I think the industry needs to do a better thing at perceiving. There are a load of young people, especially who come out of, say, an engineering degree that might want to move into, say, the tech industry in particular, but don't necessarily know about all of the roles that are available. The companies might not necessarily be in the places that they're looking or hiring from, and people end up going into other things because the opportunities aren't necessarily there. Similarly, like even down to tech apprenticeships, we need to do a lot more to encourage people. You don't have to just go to university to work in certain sectors, and we don't as an industry really evangelize and talk enough about that and market and do those, and those create barriers to people, because unless what was people doing there WhatsApping me because they're like, Ashleigh, how do you get a job at Google? People didn't know. Like, do you know what I mean? Unless how are you meant to know? So if no one's teaching you, we're not saying that stuff up, then it's no surprise that people are doing other things.
And as a follow-up to that question, Ashleigh, I see you've set up a virtual conference. It's called the Black Tech Fest.
Yeah.
Could you speak to our audience more about what Black Tech Fest is?
Yeah, so we actually started it virtually, but actually it's in person. So it's actually between the 10th and the 12th of October this year. It's in person. We're going to have 5,000 people there. And next year we're hoping to get 10. So it's the biggest in Europe of its kind. Why not? Like, if you're going to do something, you might as well do it big. So, the whole idea from that actually was, although it happened in 2020, it wasn't like a response to like what happened at George Floyd and stuff. We had actually announced it and planning it far before that. The reality was it was a response to call for gaslighting. If people want to go back, the narrative around like why there wasn't Black people in, science, technology, engineering, math was that, well, they didn't apply, or that they weren't there, and therefore, companies weren't missing things, and that actually companies were this great bastion of like equality, and it's all a meritocracy, and as long as everybody was, applying and getting in, that it would be fine. And I just called that gaslighting fundamentally, because like here in my experience, I was seeing people who were literally, trying to get jobs, who had the skills, who would come out in some instances with great degrees and not necessarily have those opportunities. But yet people say, well, it's your fault for not applying. But yet, like, well, when they would apply, they'd never hear back, or they'd get discriminated because of their name. Like, so do you know what I mean? Let's actually, let's call a spade here. That was what was going on. And actually, I think we let, as a society, corporates kind of meander into this thing. And, we talk about ethnic minorities, but it's the same for women. It's only maybe in the last 5 years that, we started to see, what is it? a third of the FTSE now have more than a couple of women on their boards. Well, it's not that women have suddenly become more capable on the planet now, is it? Like what was happening for the last 50 years before that? Like, do you get what I'm saying? These things weren't happening. They weren't right. Do you know? So let's call it out. So, from that perspective, we were like, look, there's a lack of data and it's really hard to find the data. And actually, our first data report, literally, we looked at the FTSE, we counted people, we said, you're an ethnic minority, you're a woman, etc., etc. And then we put that out there. And it got cited for a good couple of years because it's the only data source out there. We were like, well, there isn't a lot of data and a lot of people weren't really that fussed about it. Because as I said, pre-George Floyd, people are like, is it really a problem? Maybe it's not. So we were just like, look, let's just bring as many people together as we can. And great, in the first few years we had thousands of people online. Obviously, it was online because of COVID and the pandemic. And we were just like, well, we actually all exist. We did it for the first year live in person. And we had 3,500 people there. It wasn't that we don't exist in the industry. It's just that people never really took notice. And actually, there's loads more people who want to get in who are there to find out. So for us, we're in London. Global city, there's millions of people here. Why not?
So Ashleigh, in terms of your viewpoints, do you think, in terms of equality, diversity, and inclusion, do you think corporates are doing enough to embed EDI within their workforce and are doing enough to employ more people from diverse backgrounds?
I mean, the short answer is no. They're doing more than they have done. So I suppose you have to say some credit for progress. I think in terms of what or why or etc. why I say no. I mean, look at the available data and the stats of where we are, for example, just now. We still do not see, representation in almost all walks of our society in the way that it should be. I mean, you can look at, say, the Premier League and the football clubs and who's managing and running those, all the way over to, our top engineering companies, to the tech companies that are founded. There is a lot more work to be done. And it's not just corporates. I think it's important to say it's not, it's a society thing. As I said, in every walk of life, it's to say, we can't just put corporates in this bucket and say, well, it's your fault. Like, it's not somebody else's fault as well. But yeah, they're doing more. But there needs to do more. I think the challenge that we're at now is like, obviously everyone's cutting their budgets, everyone's thinking about what should I do, and it's making sure that people don't lose that momentum. I mean, there's been a lot of groundwork put in to put people involved, to make it people's job responsibilities, to put more programs in place. And some organizations have been quicker to adopt that than others. So there is change and it's moving in the right direction. But take a look over the pond in the USA. We see increasing activism to try and reduce focus on diversity, inclusion, efforts. We see people actively saying that these things are harmful or bad or discriminating, and as a result of that, I don't want to call it a fight because I'm not here to fight people. I just want everything to be better. Do you know what I mean? I'm not a make love not war person. Like, do you know what I mean? But there's gonna be a struggle to do that because there are people who people used to say hiding in plain sight. They're not hiding. They'll actively go and tell you that they're not for that. And we have to have a counter narrative to it.
And Ashleigh, I wanted to ask, what are some of the most, let's say, innovative or exciting projects that you've been a part of or you've been working on over the last year?
Ooh, one that isn't Black Tech Fest, actually, I'll talk about is our work that we've done with Meta. So Meta, the company formerly known as Facebook, supported us to do some work to support entrepreneurs who are building in Web3. So obviously, when they did their big rebrand and called themselves Meta, they saw this as a great opportunity, as we did, frankly, to get people from diverse backgrounds to build new products, tools, services for virtual worlds. Fundamentally, we see where we are in this world, but there's no reason why. Well, there's lots of reasons, but let's reduce those reasons why people can't necessarily go and do that in the virtual world. So for we did a great partnership with them. It's called the 100 Worlds program, and effectively what we said is that we would go and train over 100 organizations to build products, services, tools, technology, services for the metaverse. But those would be people from diverse backgrounds in particular, not exclusively. Obviously, if you aren't coming from one and you still want to learn, we're not going to say no. And I think that's that's what people get wrong. Like, I'm not here to say no to people who are from majority groups. I want you to be in that conversation. I just also want to help people who aren't in that room as well, where you are as well. So that's kind of how I see that. And yeah, it was super good. So we started by supporting them, lots of hackathon training and workshops, etc. But the really exciting part, and this is one thing that I'm super passionate about, is travel. We actually managed to take them on a trade mission effectively. So we took them to Singapore to actually help them work out how to export that technology. So it wasn't just like, great, you've got your organization started, or this is what you do. It's like, here's an opportunity to take you to Meta's APAC HQ. We're going to one of Asia's biggest tech events. You're going to meet the High Commissioner and the Trade Commissioner. And actually, we're going to set you up with amazing conversations with fantastic brands to actually help you go and sell that technology to the rest of the world. Because, you know, there are great markets outside of the UK as well. And that was something that, you know, they funded, they supported, and went incredibly well. Some of that stuff is actually still happening right now. We only actually went on the trip to Singapore back in the end of May, beginning of June. So yeah, there's still bits and bobs going on. But yeah, that was something that's super exciting and, you know, just different. And again, you know, this wasn't happening 2 or 3 years ago. You know, this didn't happen, you know, until this year. You got to make it happen. And, you know, part of that's that stuff. There was no blueprint for this. It's just like, it's an idea I had in Meta's canteen. And it's like, well, let's make it happen then.
Where do you see the future of ColorInTech? And then the second part question is, you know, for a young person listening to this podcast and thinking, do you know what, I'd like to give a shot at becoming an entrepreneur and wanted to almost follow in your footsteps, what 3 essential skills would you say are required in order to do your job?
Got it. I'm going to hit the second question first before I forget it, because I'll never remember the first one. So, yeah, if you want to be an entrepreneur, I think there are a few things. I think some people kind of like see it as this like glamorous pursuit. Yeah. And that's because that's what people want you to see. You know, like entrepreneurs are marketers almost by definition. You got to sell yourself, your product, your service. So no one's telling you about the time when you're at like 11 p.m. doing like the emails or payroll, or do you know what I mean? You've got to log in on your holiday because something's gone wrong. Like, people don't want to show you that side of it. Like, so I think part of it's actually like having resilience and recognize it's not all roses. Like, I think a lot of people kind of just assume, oh, working for yourself is great. No, it's stressful because every day you don't know if you're going to get a paycheck. You're working every day, all the time, never stop. And like, for some people, you know, they want to stop. Do you know what I mean? So like, don't think that it's all roses and have resilience. So I think that's the first thing. Like, have the fortitude to know that you're going to have like some of that time. And, you know, that's not to say, oh, I don't have resilience if I work for somebody. It's just to be honest with yourself about what you're willing to put up with. I don't want to do this forever. Like, I'm very open with everybody about that. Like, it's not good for my mental health. At some point, I want to check out, get a nice pension, leave at 5. Like, that's fine. Like, be honest with ourselves. That's okay too. Like, you know, the world's full of different amazing people and stuff like that. I think the second thing is to really focus on networking. Like, networking, there are going to be so many stories in the journey, and I've got some as well that have been opened up, doors that open because you've met the right people, the right spaces, you've gone to the right things, you know, like, to an extent, that's how I do business development. I meet great people and eventually we might end up working together. And sometimes those relationships might take years, but like, that's, you know, that's part of it. You've got to develop relationships and network with people. And the third is timing. It's not like, right, now I think I'm going to be an entrepreneur. Don't force the idea. Like, when we started, going back to the journey, basically someone's begging us to do the work. Like, someone's, here's the money, can you do it? Like, that's when I knew it made sense, yeah? When I saw an email which had more money in a deal with it than my entire annual salary, that's when I knew it was time for me to do this. Like, do you know what I mean? When I saw these things, don't feel like you have to like jump into it. Oh, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. You're going to be eating bread and toast for like 5 days a week because you can't afford other things. It's fine to do 2 jobs at once. It's fine to do these things and work on the timing. And then final question, where do you see ColorInTech? I always said I want to build a business that doesn't need me. Remember, I started the journey when I was like effectively 22, 23. I never even wanted to do it. As I said, someone basically begging us to do it and giving us some money before I even started doing it. Like, do you get what I mean? And I still don't want to do it. I already told you, at some point I want to stop doing it. So like, for me, it's about building something that lives beyond me. So that like, do you know what I mean? The mission, hopefully the mission doesn't exist, but it probably will. So hopefully it doesn't need to be the Ashleigh show.
Since you've started your journey as an entrepreneur, what are some of, let's say, the habits or best practices that you've picked up on your journey, which has helped to essentially make you as successful as you are today?
Oh, well, thank you. I think there are 2 things. Don't get too high on the highs and too low on the lows. Every day is a bit of a roller coaster, and if you get so swept up in the highs and so swept down the lows, it's too much an emotional roller coaster load for you. It affects your mood, your relationships. I've lost relationships because of my work. I've had to learn the hard way. So like, don't get too highs in the highs. When things are going well, that's good. Don't get too lows in the lows. You know, there will be a brighter day tomorrow. And just remember that. And the other thing is create space. one of the reasons I travel a lot, and I travel a lot, I've done 63 countries. Like, I do a lot. And those are individual ones, let alone the ones I keep going back to. So I force myself to have a break. And like, maybe it's healthy, maybe it's not, but like, maybe it's running away. Who knows? Like, psychologists tell me. But the idea is that I have to change my environment. I have to change my setting. I have to change my priorities to give myself a mental opportunity to stop. Because otherwise I'm go, go, go. And as I said, as an entrepreneur, you're never off. You're never off. You want to be, you're never off. So to try and, if I'm in Fiji, if I'm in Hawaii, literally 11 time zones away, I'm as off as I can be because I can't be on because no one else is awake at the same time as me. So like, that's part of my strategy as well. Get away, give yourself an opportunity to do something else and reprioritize.
Now, Ashleigh, final question before we move on to the bonus. Yeah, you've achieved a lot. How we met was through BBC Radio 1 Extra's Future Figures last year. And shout out you. So I was featured on the 2021, which was during COVID, and we didn't get to all meet until you were featured in the following year, 2022, and we all met in London. But you've been an advisor to government. You've been featured in Forbes 30 Under 30, the Financial Times. You've been a strategic advisor. The question I'm trying to get at is, what's been your proudest achievement so far?
Ooh, that's a really hard one, to be honest. And this kind of thing, I said, don't get too highs and lows. Like, we're still here. Like, this was never the plan. And like, look, it's quite funny, but like, I left my full-time job, and then 3 weeks, two weeks later, the whole global pandemic happened. Yeah, a lot of businesses didn't make it through that moment. Like, we've had like this 2023 year, which some people have been cutting, the first recession in the modern day tech industry. We're still here. We've had a pandemic. We weren't able to do in-person events for 2 years. I partly run an events business, and yeah, I managed to scale it. We're still here. We're still thriving. We're still doing things. We're going bigger than we've ever done. Like, for me, like, like the fact that we're still doing what we're doing today is like that, because there's been a lot of challenges. That lockdown period is tough to run a business. Tough.
No, it was incredibly tough. I've spoke about it on the podcast before, how for a lot of businesses it was the worst thing to happen, COVID, but it helped grow our business. It allowed us to think about and go in explore different opportunities, which we never would have gone down the route had COVID never existed.
Who made it.
We're gonna have to stay posted on your journey and see where it all
follow
goes.
me. I'm on LinkedIn,
Well, that was gonna be the next thing. Say, you know what? This is your time now. Plug yourself. Where can people go follow you, Ashleigh?
Yeah, so as I said, I never wanted to be the Ashleigh Show. So follow the companies. I literally set them up to stop people WhatsApping me. Yeah, that was literally what I did. So after you had to get the job, go to ColorInTech.org instead. Yeah, so that's what you could do. Go there. Obviously, all of the socials, ColorInTech. You can find us everywhere apart from X, which we're ColorInTech.org. Because you didn't get the name quick enough. And then there's all of that. Find me on LinkedIn as well. Or I've got a website. Just Google my name, you'll find me.
Excellent. And then before we completely wrap up, is there any last message that you'd like to tell the audience?
Yeah, follow your passions. Follow them, and things. Network widely, be interesting and interested, and things will take you far. Connect with me. I can't always get back as straight away, but I will try. If there's any way we can collaborate, reach out.
Ash, thank you so much for being a guest on the CBBB podcast, and we'll keep updated with your journey.
Yeah, shout out to you guys. Thanks so much for having me, give me the platform, and persisting with my admin to get here. So thank you.
Blessed, man. Take it easy.
Cheers.
That's awesome.